Following Christ is not for the faint of heart. Striving to be a kingdom man isn't about packing up and taking a vacation. It's about getting your mind right, your gear packed, and heading into war. It's more important now than ever before to stand up for what's right and just in the eyes of the Lord and seek His truth. This ain't a cruise ship, fellas. It's a battleship. So buckle up and get ready for the truth, the uncomfortable truth. Hello and welcome back to The Uncomfortable Truth. We are so glad to have you today. If you would, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you haven't yet, it'll help us reach more people for Jesus, and we would greatly appreciate it. On Monday, we left off. Obi was about to tell us about him running and getting in shape for Coach Boyett's program. Here's the rest of the story and part two with Coach Boyett. Here we go.
My freshman year, I didn't quite know what I was getting into. And about maybe 3 weeks before the season or before the school started, I run into David Mitchell, and David told me, "Have you been running?" And I'm like, "No, I haven't been running." "What do you mean?" "You need to start running right now." And
let me add this. Obi didn't look as a freshman like he looks now. He's pretty fit now. He was had a little chub on him.
Yes.
He was a freshman.
Yes.
Mr. Tubby.
Sean's
I can vouch for
Hey, until my sophomore year, because Coach Boyett got a hold of me.
I
my
ran it off
freshman
of him.
year.
That's right.
You
He
absolutely did. I think I grew about 3 or 4 inches that year too. But I got into the first day, and I threw up before we even thought about running because I was so terrified of what was about to come, because it had all been built up in those last 3 weeks, because David was like, "You need to start running right now." And I did. And I made it, but I think I threw up every year before we started running. So sophomore, junior, senior, because my feelings as a freshman were correct in that this was about to be the toughest thing that I had ever done. And it was. It absolutely was the toughest thing I'd ever done, but I wouldn't trade it. I wouldn't trade it for the world.
The interesting thing about the guys talking about David Mitchell, he actually built my house that I live in right now. Built 2 houses for me, actually. But when David was a freshman, he struggled as much as anybody I've ever had. I don't know if you knew that or not. He had to run a lot of makeup laps and struggled, but his sophomore year came back a different guy. And I don't know if I've ever seen a guy flip the switch like he did mentally, of embracing it, attacking it versus dreading it. Yes. And that's the ones. It wasn't that they couldn't physically do it. It's just that their mindset was, this is hard. And that was the biggest challenges to me, is trying to get them to be able to flip that switch and see, once you've done it, particularly once as a freshman, how much easier it was after that.
Right. Just
because you'd done it once and you saw
it was.
I can do this.
Absolutely. It goes from being a barrier to rocket fuel.
Yeah. And we always talked about it as, you can either look at it as an obstacle or a stepping stone.
Yeah, I love that.
And, boy, when you flip that switch, it just makes such a huge difference in your entire life. And that was – obviously you do that part to get in shape. Basketball, we played fast. We had to be in shape, but that wasn't the main reason. The main reason was to make people tougher and to see, I can do this. And I'm going to tell you, when those guys, they might not have been any good at basketball, some of them, but when they came out of that first 4 weeks, they puffed that chest out around the hall. They'd done something that, not everybody could do. And
I mean, you're probably putting them, even in a high school, having been in education for 15 years, you're putting them in the top 1%. Truthfully, of 15 to 18-year-olds at that point.
They would do it.
They recognize that.
And, I know it was hard, and I think they thought I enjoyed inflicting punishment on them. But the enjoyable part to me was to see the growth that they had, and one of the things we did is we were big on accountability. And every year I'd have your average time for the mile, and if you ran 6:10 as a sophomore, when you came back the next year, that was posted. You better not do 6:10 as a junior, And right. Every year it better drop a little. And I can remember sometimes the older guys telling some of the freshmen, "You don't want to do too good. you come out there and you do that, and the coach is going to expect next year, And you see how this." And Didn't have a whole lot, but I know there's a little bit of that going on.
No doubt.
Sometimes.
There certainly was.
Did y'all mess with the freshmen, like when you're a junior and senior, and say, like, hey, by the time you're a senior, you're going to have to run like a 4.5 minute mile?
There was a little messing on. There was a little messing going on, but we did a little different.
Yeah.
Our juniors and seniors, at least in the basketball program, they were very. It was
supportive.
It was just a support system.
That's awesome.
Even at the top, I mean, it was they knew what coach was doing by that time, and they wanted to continue the tradition and the programming, and be a part of the growth. So
and I think a lot of that, like if Obi's a senior, and one of the things I would tell the freshmen was, if you got a question, you don't ask me.
Mm-hmm.
You go ask Obi.
Yep.
Now, if Obi can't answer it, then you come to me. Mm-hmm. And if Obi can't answer it, I'm calling Obi in because Obi ought to be able to answer it.
Yep.
And they knew, sometimes you get into what Shane was kind of your upperclassmen. I wouldn't say hazing necessarily, but, there's a little bit of rite of passage kind of deal. And I'm sure we had a little bit of that. But for more so than anything, it was bring them along. It was I've been there. I know it's hard, and it's going to get better, And, as a senior and stuff, I would tell them, if that freshman screws up, I'm not going to yell at him. I was probably lying there. I probably would. But I'm going to yell at Obi first.
Absolutely.
Because it's your job to train him, And I just thought that was a good way to develop leadership, and then it made more of the team.
No doubt.
I mean, you taught us that the seniors were the last ones out of the locker room. We were checking the lockers, we were checking the towel bin, we were making sure that all that stuff was done. If there was a towel hanging over the towel bin by literally the corner of the towel, our butts were running the next day. Yeah. I mean, we were running, and that wasn't gonna happen because I was gonna be the last person out of the locker room. Now there might have been a time or two that happened, but that's how you made it work. It's how you instilled those traits and skills and just the mindset in us throughout the entire program, which is so awesome. Such a neat.
Well, along the discipline lines that Obi's talking about there, you asked for stories a while ago. So I can remember, if you didn't have your shoes straight and all that. And, of course, freshmen, I mean, this is a new world for them. But fortunately, they had the upperclassmen usually that were going to train them. And not often did they, but when somebody would, I'd put a note on their locker. Well, I wouldn't just put 3 Mavericks or an extra. I would write a dissertation on why it's important that those shoes be flat. And the discipline of doing that every day, that there's a right and wrong way. And I know they would see that note up there and they think, why is this guy writing me a letter about my shoes not being flat? And I knew that would send the message to them, this must be important. If he's going to take the time to do all of that, this must be a big deal. I may not see it right now as a freshman, but there's got to be something to this. And, I just think taking the time to do things like that, because you can't just go – one of the things that Coach Noel taught me, he said, all these X's and O's are good, but if you don't learn how to motivate and learn how to get guys to give the best effort that they can, I don't care what you do. And I took that to heart. And I had to let them know it may be hard in all this, but there's a reason for it. And I'm going to take the extra time to do all this too, just to show you we're not just doing this for the sake of doing it. And I think – as a freshman, you don't get it a lot. Like Obi said, time you're a junior, senior, it starts to add up after that.
The thing I love about that, having been a head coach for many, many years, is that I think there's a direct correlation between wanting to haze is a popular term today, and bring along. Bring along is normally indicative and right in line with the leader, because they can't wait to see the success continue. And it's almost a tarnished effect if it doesn't continue after they leave and represents them.
That's your job.
That's your job. Yeah. And that's why you see a kid who played for you at doing UPS delivery, sweating his butt off and going, I got this. Yeah. I mean, that is the power of pouring into somebody when they don't know what they don't know.
Yeah. And, as a guy in my spot, even today, you need little bits of validation to keep you going, to let you know what you're doing is not useless. I can't tell you Jacob Perry's a guy that played for me at one of my first teams. He's a principal at Waxahachie now. And I talked to him, and the I believe sheet that I would give y'all explaining what I did earlier, he said, Coach, I got that frame. That's in my office.
Wow.
I see that. It's above my desk every day. A kid named Zach Wright that went to University of Arkansas, and he was struggling. And he said, Coach, that's up in my dorm room. It's in a frame. And when I'm struggling, that's what I go back to. And as a coach, that's that bit of validation that it tells you got to keep doing that. Those days maybe you don't feel like it or somebody's on your butt about something, it's worth it to go through that.
That brings me to my next question. That's what I wanted to really ask. The longer we keep talking, you keep answering a lot of the questions, so I'm having to go to the next one, which is awesome because these are a lot of the things that I feel like it's super important for our listeners to know and understand. But everything that I'm hearing is never quit, discipline, extreme discipline, accountability. These are all things that you're instilling in these kids. And one of the things that I wanted to know from and you just now kind of touched on that is, was there a point like when you were 28 years old or 30 years old, was there a time kind of like the Jacob Perry story, whenever you realized, wow, I am truly making a difference in these guys' lives, and this is awesome, almost like God saying, look, here it is, and you did, like I said, you brought that up, but I wanted to know, like, when was the earliest? Was Jacob Perry the first one, or was there a time whenever, and you talked about like David Mitchell, and you saw the light turn on? Was that the place where, and I know that was later in your coaching career, but where was the earliest evidence that that you realized this is awesome. This is where I'm supposed to be. I'm right in God's will right here.
Yeah. Well, to answer that, one of the greatest things as a coach is just two words: thank you. That when a kid graduates, that they just utter and I've gotten letters, emails, texts from kids just explaining, this is things that you never thought of, never even knew were going on, or areas where maybe they were affected that you didn't know. But, to kind of answer your question, Sean, I don't, my first year I had two seniors, a kid named Jason Bean and one named Jacob Ransom. And I got a letter from Jacob after and you got to remember, I was only 25, so they were 18. I mean, we weren't very far.
They're 48 right now.
Exactly. I call him a kid still, and he, I don't know. But anyway, and I got a letter from him after we graduated, and it took a while.
Jacob's a doctor now.
Yeah, he's a foot doctor, podiatrist,
Okay.
again, down in New Braunfels. And he's got a boy playing in 7th grade this past year playing basketball. But that letter that he wrote me, was just one, because we were struggling. I mean, all those wins and championships and stuff, that didn't happen overnight.
I was going to say, those first several years were tough.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't make the playoffs till I think my 3rd year as the head coach, and then we won a district championship, I think, my 6th or 7th year or something. So it was definitely a process. We were trying to change the way we played, and there was some pushback to some of that. It was a little bit higher level of accountability than what some were in. And there was times it was a struggle. And, I guess the biggest validation to me was before every one of our games, at some point in time, I would have a little bit of alone time, just me and God. And, at our home games, I would walk up to my classroom, where we had history. Obi was my student teacher, by the way, one year. And so I won't talk about
Aaron
someone, all right? We'll leave it at that. All right. So anyway, I would walk up to my room and I would have a little alone time, and part of that was prayer, and I know a lot of times people are like, where's he going? Is he leaving? We got a game here in just a little bit, and I would never pray for the result of a game. I would pray that I would do my best, that the guys, and whatever result we got, that I would deal with that in the proper way. And we were a few years into it, and one of the things, if you're trying to get people to buy into something and you're doing what I'm doing, for that to happen, there has to be a certain degree of success.
Right.
That people have to see, man, this stuff works. And for us, whether we like it or not, some of that's wins and losses. And, my platform's not going to be as big if people don't want to play, or if we don't, get to have articles in the paper and stuff. So we were getting to this point, and we mentioned Tatum earlier. We were about to play Tatum, and the winner's going to be the district champion. And White Oak hadn't won the district championship since 1967, and this was in 1998. It was 31 years later.
Wow.
In fact, we hadn't been to the playoffs even.
Wow.
Once, I think it was before then. And so it's all on the line that night. And I can remember praying then, God, I'm not asking to win, but if this is going to work like I think both of us want this to work, at some point in time, we got to see it's a factor in this getting us over the edge. And we played like I'd never seen us play that night. We were fortunate enough to win. And, of course, I was thankful for that. But more so I was thankful for this is going to give us a little bit bigger platform.
Yeah.
And, that was one of the moments of validation. Probably one earlier than that was I know y'all know the Carr family. I've coached as many Carrs as I have Bakers, and Roger Carr is David Carr's, Dan and John's dad. He's kind of the patriarch, I guess, of the Carr family. And right after, I don't remember what year it was, I got a great letter from Mr. Carr. And his first line was, I can see what you're doing. And I'm like,
he's a sharp cookie.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he is. And I'm like, okay. And then he goes on, he says, I see where you're going with this. And he had just read some of my quotes in the papers and stuff. Because one of the things I told myself was, if we ever get to that point where I'm being quoted in the paper, I always want to work my faith in there at some point in time. I mean, you can't just beat it over the head, but you got to have, and I knew God would give me ways to work that in there. And, and the bigger our platform got, I guess one of the proudest things I ever was when we were in Austin, and I would bring my kids in with me for the press conference, and every one of those was a kid of faith. And somewhere in there, they're going to give the glory to God. And it wasn't me telling them that. That's what they believed.
It's pretty special for some 16, 17, and 18-year-old kids.
It says a lot for how they were raised. I mentioned, the I believe philosophy. There's not a lot of schools in the country you could go in and coach is going to talk to you about God before you ever talk about basketball. And I've been blessed to live in a community that's embraced that. And, each year I would do that, there's no doubt, I guess the secular part of things in my mind would say, you gotta be a little careful with how you do this, but it's got to be done, and I wasn't going to back off of that, but I wasn't stupid either. Yeah. And, I knew that I believe statement's on my blog. It's out there for everybody to see. Somebody could see that and say, what's this guy doing here, And so I was very blessed to be at a place that embraced Christian values. But, again, back to Sean's question, it's kind of those two things, the letter from Mr. Carr, the game with Tatum when we won. And I can remember I was leaving late at night after that game, probably 11:30. A guy named Chris Tubbs, who'd played for Coach Noel earlier. Y'all know the Tubbs boys. And driving up on a motorcycle, and I'm thinking, who is this wild guy driving up here? And he comes screeching in there, pulls his helmet off, and I recognize him. He said, Coach, how'd we do? And I knew in the tone of his voice he was prepared for me to say, we lost. And when I said, we won, because before we'd gotten close so many times, I said we won, it shocked him a little bit, and I don't think he wanted me to think that, but I could tell by the look on his face it did. And, just being able to kind of increase the platform a little bit from there just made a huge difference. And, I never wanted people to think that, we're doing this because we want to win more games. If we put God here, he's going to put us there. I never felt that way about it. But, in my career there, I've been blessed beyond measure. Just with the things we were able to do, the kids I coached and the success that we had. But I am thankful. I'm proud that when we got to that platform, that people would see what our faith was.
That's all. That's super
as
awesome.
Much as the medals and the trophies, to get to sit there and they're broadcasting this game statewide and get to sign off with "To God be the glory," that was a highlight for me.
Just yesterday, I sent this quote to Obi, and it's kind of timely with what you're talking about. And it's a quote by Bob Vernon that actually another Texas Farm Bureau agent sent me, and I just thought it was relevant. But it says, if you want to be a good witness for Jesus Christ on your job, then be the very best worker on your job. People do not want to hear Jesus from a guy who is an average worker, but they stand in line to talk to everyone, to talk to the very best worker in their company. And a guy named Bob Vernon said that, and I think that is it's so true, because I feel like that God wants us to take our talents and he wants us to use them to the best of our ability. And then, whenever that platform is created, he wants us to give him all the glory. Mm-hmm. And you've just, the platform that y'all created is pretty remarkable. And I feel like it's going to have a ripple effect that's going to last for long after we're gone. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, it's like I said earlier, we have a motto at the school now. It says, we believe in all kids all the time. And Mr. Gilbert, when they came up with that, he said, we modeled that off the I believe philosophy. We have a big marquee in town with all the district championships, and it's got the UIL logo, but it's also got I believe on it. And obviously all of those programs that weren't under that motto, if you want to call it, but I think it's become a big deal for the community and the school.
It's become a staple.
1,000%.
And gone, much bigger than that. And, again, I'm thankful Coach Noel brought that here. I'm thankful I and the guys that were in our program were able to take it to another level. And, hopefully it will continue to do that.
It absolutely will continue.
I think the foundation is strong.
Yes,
and, to Sean's point, we can all live out a Christian life. We may not all be gifted speakers or be able to, like I was able to stand in front of a group of kids and talk about my faith and stuff. We can't all do that at all our jobs, but we can model it all the time.
That's right.
And, stories come to me as y'all are talking, and I know I'm dominating the talk probably.
No, that's why you're here.
But,
what you're here for.
After one season, I got a short note from a kid, and he said, "Coach, I'm not a believer, but the way you live your life and the way we do things here makes me interested. I want to find out more about it."
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you, when you get nuggets like that, that stuff keeps you going.
Yes, sir.
I mean, it just to know the kid. I mean, if I told you who the kid was, it wouldn't surprise you he was that up front with it. Mm-hmm. He was a kid that when we would say the prayer, I would know he didn't bow his head a lot of times. He never was disrespectful about it. Mm-hmm. But I knew, particularly if we were lost and he was not feeling so good, I could feel a little bit of tension there, But for him to do that at the end, who knows if he ever has given his life to Christ. I don't know that. But I know the seed was planted there.
Yes, sir.
And that's my job.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
exactly our job.
Yep.
Coach, you've got your program has 2 state championships under the belt. Walk us through, and I know you're not going to discount any of the other teams that came through there, but walk us through.
I won't do that. You're
I
right
know,
about that.
I know you won't. Walk us through what made that team maybe a tad bit more special, or what propelled that team to 2 state championships.
Yeah, well, and to touch on your point about not saying anything about, I get pinned down all the time about what's the best team you ever coached. Coach, I won't tell anybody. Who's the best team?
Hey, listen, you could tell us. We won't tell anybody.
Well, give me your top 5 players. Who's your, and every time that comes up, I'm like, I ain't going there.
Before you finish that answer,
Were you going to say he's not going to hurt your feelings?
yeah, I'm gonna. Sean had sent a message or one of the questions to the group saying something about best team or something along those lines, and I was thinking, Coach ain't gonna answer that question. He's gonna he's gonna defer, that question.
I
But
guess what I'm looking for is like, what was the spark? What was the multiplier?
And, And I guess I was going to qualify it by saying what people don't realize a lot of times, I was a head coach here for 25 years. For the first 17 of that, we were one of the smallest schools in Class 3A, which is 4A now. And I'm going to tell you, and during those 17 years, Obi played during that time, you're fighting for your life. I mean, you're not only fighting to try to win a game or maybe a playoff game, you're fighting not to get embarrassed. A lot of times with some of those cats we're lining up against. Mm-hmm. And so when we dropped a classification, became the big fish in the little pond, there's no doubt that makes a huge difference.
With the foundation you had also built.
Yeah, it's true.
To propel that.
When, when people think about the 2012, 2013 team, I could probably give you 2 or 3 others that, maybe if we were playing in 2A then, who knows?
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Something just popped into my head. I remember after the state championship game, we were there, and I remember Connor Wilson, who's no longer with us,
I was standing right next to you.
Walking up to Obi, and he said something along the lines of, "Man, they're a good team, but I think we could have beat them."
Yeah.
Any good competitor, right?
It just was.
Yeah, the thing about Connor, he played with David. Is in 2000, their team went to the regional finals in what would be 4A now, and I'm gonna tell you, if I had to compare that was a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, and I'm not saying and I ain't gonna cross the line.
Yeah,
but. What he probably didn't tell you, we got to the regional final, and, I mean, that was tough. We get to the regional final, play Gainesville. And before the game started, there was a wreck out on the interstate, and it knocked all the power out.
Oh, wow.
So we're sitting around for like 30 minutes or whatever. And we start playing the game. Gainesville was quite a bit better than us. And after about 3 minutes, 4 minutes, we had the first timeout in the game, and we're already down about 15 or so. And I'm looking at them on the bench, and they're looking at me, and we're all thinking the same thing. This ain't happening. And I mean, we can sit here and go with the coach speak and all that if we want to, but we ain't fooling nobody right here.
That's funny.
I think they had 3 kids that, not all in basketball, I think 2 in basketball, that played Division I athletics. So It was just a massive – they beat us by 50.
Wow.
And,
in the regional final.
In the regional final.
Wow.
And the talking to the press afterwards, and they asked me, well, what'd you think? And I said, well, when those lights went out, I think that was an omen from God. That was telling us we should have just went home when that happened. But, so Connor probably didn't tell you that part when we got there. But, to answer Shane's question, no doubt in coaching, the program and all those things are going to factor in, but don't ever doubt talent is the main thing in success.
Right.
And, those kids that were coming through at that time, we had a 3-year span from 2011, 12, and 13 where we were, I believe, 106-4.
Wow.
Or 104-6, one of those 2 in 3 years.
Half of those losses were playoff
Yeah.
losses.
And, and 2 of them were to teams that would win state championships on their own right in different classifications. So during that span, obviously talent is going to be a huge aspect of that. But, the leadership that was involved, and, the first year there was, I don't know if pressure is the right word, expectations, but White Oak hadn't won a state championship in basketball since 1957. And the kids on that team, you could feel it as you got closer. The expectations were high, and, going through the playoffs, we didn't always play our best, but we did enough to win. And, finally getting to the point to where we were able to win it. For some of them, I know it was like such a dream come true, but also to a little bit of relief, almost even, And I never tried to put that on myself, I was totally at peace when we got there. I knew we'd done all we could do. I don't want to know the real answer to this, but I want to hope if we had lost, I would have handled it the same way as if we won. And, I don't remember if it was that year or the year after, we were at the Texas A&M team camp during the summer. And I was sitting by my side watching our team play, and another coach came up to me. Didn't even know him, just came up, named Charles Ament. Guys become, from that time there, became a good friend of mine. And asked me kind of what you were asking there, what was the difference, and some things like that. And he said one of the things I noticed was when the game was over, you just walked down and shook the other coach's hand like you always do and walked back. And he said, you weren't jumping up and down. You were, and I told him, I said, well, Charles, in my mind, whether we had won or lost, I had done my job. Mm-hmm. I'd prepared them as best I could. We had done what I felt like we were supposed to do, and I was willing to take the outcome that we had. And there's peace with that. Obviously I wanted to win, and like I said, I don't want to know how I would have acted. I hope it would have been the same, but the bottom line to answer is you have to have talent to do it, first of all, and then kids that buy in. And, and handling the mental side of it, of handling the expectations and the pressure, particularly that first year, was, for looking back at a group of kids and the way that, and I know they would all tell you their faith is what helped them tremendously with that. The second year is a little bit different. We had done it before. We had some experience that we didn't have the first time. And the expectations to repeat were kind of the big driving factor there. And we didn't probably have quite as much depth as we did the year before. But, we're sitting and eating after the first state championship. It ain't been 3 hours. We just got through eating, and I'm getting the first question, Coach, we going to do it again next year? I'm like, dude, hold on just a second now. We ain't even
Give
got
me 24 hours at least
to go home yet, and that's all right. And I just remember thinking to myself, that's how it is. I mean, that's just what you live with. So
that's awesome. That is awesome.
If you don't have lofty goals on top of the lofty goals, then when you reach those lofty goals, it could be a downward spiral, right? Like, what's the next step?
I think it goes to the foundation of what we're trying to create daily, whether we're a very successful high school basketball coach in East Texas or we're a father. That message that you're pouring into your kids is relevant then, the next day, 20 years from now, and you can just see that really and truly that first day you took over as a head coach, the commitment to what you were wanting to create allowed the outcome in 12 and 13.
Yeah.
But it's almost impossible, and this is the beauty of knowing the Lord. We glorify him when things are great, and we go to him when things aren't, but we're able to reflect on that and go, I see those nuggets.
Yeah.
And I'm here because of that first kid. I'm here because of that first group of guys who didn't win a championship, and that's hard. It's exciting and hard to process all at the same time.
And, to keep it in perspective, I remember both years when we came back and the next day, and what was weird is I think both weekends we won on a Saturday. We had spring break after that. So we had like a week before we came back to school. Of course, they're all wanting to get back to school and walk the halls and, and all that. So it's a little bit of dead time. In fact, by the time they come back, a lot of them's moved on to baseball and track, but we still have our last day where we kind of meet. And I can remember telling them both years, this is a big accomplishment. It's a reward of all the things you put into it, but don't let this be the highlight of your life. Don't look back and think something I did in high school was the biggest thing that ever happened to me. And I know looking at some of them, that kind of, I ain't thought about it like that, because they're riding high right then.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And one of the things the UIL does is every 25 years they bring back the championship teams and they honor you at halftime of the state tournament.
I did not know that.
And I told them we're going to try to do two things there. One, we're all going to make a commitment here if we can that we'll be there for that. And secondly, we're going to hope that I'm still alive 25 years from now, because I'm going to be about 72 when that happens. So we're going to hope both those things happen, and then we'll come back and then you kind of see how's everybody done, because as a coach, so much more of it is after, they graduate than what happens there. And, one of the buzzwords in coaching right now is family, that you hear everybody talk about our team's a family. And I never used that. I never used the term family till after they graduated. And OB will know now, that's our basketball family.
Right.
And to me, I never did that when they're in school because, yes, there's family aspects of a team, but I can't boot you out of the family, you know.
Right.
And if there's certain things in athletics, if it don't go right, you may not get to stay.
Sure.
And so I'm just a very literal thinker, so I never wanted to use a term that I didn't think totally applied to what we were doing. Mm-hmm. Where once you cross that stage and you're done, you know, part of the deal was you gave me 4 years. I'm going to give you the rest of my life to the best of my ability. That, you know, when Obi called me up and asked me if I would do this, I said, Obi, I haven't listened to it. I don't really know what you're talking about. But there's very few things that Obi Baker would ask me to do that I'm going to say no to. Amen. I said, so, and I think you remember me probably telling you, I said, so you put me down and we'll figure it out when we get there.
Yep.
But if you ask me, and, you know, I wanted all of my guys to feel that way, that, you know, most of them, I can tell you, you know, you asked me about, I can tell you a little bit about them. We don't talk every day on the phone or whatever, but hopefully they know, by golly, if I need somebody, I can call him. And to the best of my ability, I would be there. Now, I'm not there to enable you or anything like that, but, and the beauty of it is it's a two-way street. Obi would do just anything for me, just like I would do for him.
Yep.
And
Great point.
You know, that's the part as when they graduate that I always look forward to. You know, Obi, I'm sure remembers this, that when we're done, whenever it is, state championship or whatever, I bring all the seniors in my office. And that's kind of like our farewell together. And it's an emotional time a lot of times, but you kind of cross the threshold there. Our relationship changes after that. I ain't yelled at Obi, I don't think, since he graduated. I might have done that a time.
But he wouldn't let you.
Yeah, I would.
I could probably use it, from time to time.
Those are just things that, as a coach, that you look back and those are the things that you're proud of. That's the measuring stick, I guess, to a degree.
You know, we talk about impact, Coach, and it's a big word with us, and you know, everything that you're talking about right now as we're kind of closing this out is straight impact. You know, you've spent your entire career pouring into young lives, and the Lord's blessing you, because you're able to, while you're still here on this planet, get to see the validity and the impact,
the fruits of your labor.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's so amazing. But yeah, I mean, you talk about the piece that you had right immediately after that game, and that's what stuck out to the man that you were talking about there at the Texas A&M camp, you know, and I just think that doesn't happen. That piece doesn't exist if you haven't been living and running your program the way that you had for so long, for so long, and in God's will, with what He wanted for your life. And I just think that it's so important. It's almost like I feel like it's not fair that I was the only one in this room that got to experience that, and I feel like that everybody needs to hear your story, and I feel like that everybody needs to strive to use their gift, just like you talk about in I Believe, you know, in the I Believe you know, motto, and what it really means, using their gift to figure out what they can do to have an impact for God's kingdom. Yeah. And you've done that so well. And I feel like that our listeners are 1,000% going to be inspired by your story. I knew they would be. Can't wait to get it out to everybody. But anyway,
I want to say, one more thing here. I know we're getting ready to close, but this is something that just kind of stands out to me as a testament, you know, with Coach Boyett and the type of coach he was and how the other coaches perceived him. And I think this is awesome. But Coach Richard Burks, he was my track coach in high school, and I was talking to him just a few years ago, and he said it baffles me how Coach Boyett can take a group of guys that just went 1-10 on the football field, and then put them in a basketball environment and go 15-4. He said it baffles me, and so I think that's just a testament to the influence and the mindset that he was able to, and how he was able to get through to his athletes. I think it's just, I think it's awesome, and I believe that he has a gift, and it's a God-given gift, and I think that's super cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Coach, we want to thank you. I feel like
Thank y'all.
I
I enjoyed it. It's been a blessing.
I know I was super excited to meet you.
Yes.
I mean, you didn't let us down, but Obi really built you up. So we're really thankful that you're here. Closing out, just one common theme that I noticed throughout all your talking is that in the program that was built in the time that you were there, and I'll say the program that people, the kids that played basketball for you, believed in. They put their effort and their time in. The culture that was creating was a servant and discipleship type leadership program. And how that relates to our life and our walk with Jesus is that's exactly what Jesus did. He taught, he watched them teach, and then he sent them out to do the same thing. So if you're out there listening, build your own program. Build your own program based on what Jesus taught us through his life.
Amen.
Whatever your platform is.
Amen. We want to thank you guys for joining us today. If you would, hit all those buttons, subscribe, leave us a rating, share. It'll help us reach more people for Jesus. Go out and kick the day in the face, and we'll catch you on the next one.